Chapter 17. The excrement has hit the fan. Most people assume that Miss Tarango's unearthly eardrum-shredding shriek was produced in response to the last of the stick insects mistaking her neat blonde hair for a landing pad. Personally, I think the sight of Bill Kingsley with his shirt off might have been the real cause. In any case, it brought people running from all directions, and leading the cavalry charge, as always, was Mr. Barker. "Sweet mother of God, it's the plague of locusts," he gasped in horror as he surveyed the room. It was quite a sight. Grasshoppers and spiders decorated the walls and ceiling, and every so often startled cockroaches made erratic dashes across the floor. Meanwhile, the stick insect that Miss Tarango had repelled with a mad flurry of hands before she fled down the corridor was now climbing shakily up the edge of the blackboard, while the other one that had tangled with the fan was lying like a wrecked umbrella on the ledge. Mr. Barker glared at the class. He ground out his words like a Mack truck in low gear. "I'm only going to say this once, so listen very carefully. You will have one chance and one chance only. I want whoever is responsible for this to..." "My God, Scobie, get that tarantula off your face!" James Scobie looked at Mr. Barker and then crossed his eyes as he tried to examine the spider spanning his glasses. "Actually, sir, I think you'll find it's not a tarantula, but a fine specimen of a Mexican bird-eating spider. They're quite harmless, really." "Scobie, I don't care if it's a spider equivalent of Mother Teresa. Just get that horrible hairy insect off your face." Scobie gently lifted off his glasses and placed them, with spider intact, delicately on his desk. "Technically, sir, it's not an insect, although many people make that same mistake. You see, insects' bodies are clearly divided into 3 parts or segments. And insects usually have 2 pairs of wings and 3 pairs of..." "Scobie!" Mr. Barker's voice rang out like a warning shot. "If you say one more word, you will become an insect. Because if you say one more word, I will come down there with my bare hands. I will clearly divide you into 3 parts or segments. And then before you know it, you will be flying insect-like out that door and down to my office. And guess what? You won't need 2 pairs of wings, Mr. Scobie. Oh, no, because all the thrust you will need will come from my boot on your backside. Do I make myself clear, Mr. Scobie?" Scobie blinked his small glassy eyes and nodded. "Right. Now, who knows where these insects came from?" James Scobie raised his hand. "Scobie, if you're about to tell me that spider on your desk came from Mexico, I would recommend very seriously that you reconsider." "No, sir. I was going to say that all the insects and the spiders," Scobie added quickly, "came from my desk." "From your desk, Mr. Scobie?" "Yes, sir." "Do they belong to you, Mr. Scobie?" "No, sir." "So are you telling me that you didn't put them in your desk, Mr. Scobie?" "Yes, sir." "Well, in that case, Mr. Scobie, do you have a theory on how the insects and spiders came to be in your desk?" "No, sir, that remains a mystery to me." "A mystery, Mr. Scobie? Well, let me see if I can help you solve it." Mr. Barker rubbed his chin and paced slowly back and forth in front of the glass, turning sharply toward James Scobie whenever a new hypothesis came to mind. "Tell me, Mr. Scobie, do you think that it's possible that the climactic conditions inside your desk just happen to be the next best thing to insect and spider utopia? Maybe that's why bugs from all over the globe seem to be rushing to take up residence in there?" "I wouldn't think so, sir." "No? Well, could it be that your desk is not what it appears, but it is, in fact, the opening to a wormhole in space that leads directly to the planet Insectoid?" "Highly unlikely, sir." "Then I suppose you would also discount the possibility that your desk is actually the portal to hell, and these poor creatures are escaping the fiery furnace." "I'm afraid there's no hard evidence to support that notion, sir." "Well then, tell me, Mr. Scobie, is it just possible?" And I realise that this is a bit out of left field. that maybe, just maybe, someone else, perhaps even someone in this very room, put all those insects and creatures that might appear to be insects but aren't really insects into your desk because his disturbed and peanut-like brain perceived it to be something akin to a joke. Have I mentioned that Mr. Barker had a black belt in sarcasm? What do you think, Mr. Scobie? What is your considered opinion? I think that the only conclusion that I can logistically be drawn is that someone else put the insects and the arachnids into my desk, James Scobie replied seriously. Really? And would you have just any idea who that might be have done such a thing? James Scobie reached forward, gently tipped the big spider from his glasses and put them on. He looked around the room calmly before letting his eyes rest on Barry Bagsley. Then he turned to face Mr. Barker. If I knew for certain, I would tell you, Mr. Barker, but as I have no proof, I don't think it would be right to blame anyone just on suspicion. Very wise and noble, Mr. Scobie. I agree wholeheartedly with you. Justice might be seen to be done. So let's just get our proof, shall we? Mr. Barker suggested happily. Everyone, open up your desks and bags. The end came very quickly for Barry Bagsley, Denny Wallace and Doug Savage. The shoeboxes with holes punched in the top, the empty jars and the paper bags were as good as an armory of smoking guns. When Mr. Barker pulled the last cardboard box from Denny Wallace's desk, he took off the lid and shook it slightly. Well, well, well. Another box with holes punched in the top and, if I'm not mistaken, insect excrement rattling around inside. To me, Mr. Wallace, that could only mean one thing. Do you know what that is? Denny Wallace swallowed and smiled sheepishly. The excrement has hit the fan? Oh, yes, Mr. Barker smiled back menacingly. I couldn't have put it better myself.